Welcome to the Dear Dyslexic podcast series. I'm your host, Shay Wissell. For those of you who are new to the series, welcome. And for those of you returning, thanks for tuning back in. Today I'm excited to have in the studio to speak with me a mentor of mine who has been a significant supporter not just to me, but of the Dear Dyslexic Foundation. She's a lifelong family friend, Christine MacJouvelet. Chrissy, we speak a lot about success and struggles of having dyslexia on the show, and you have shared some of your journey in some videos we recorded for National Dyslexia Awareness Day. What has it been like sharing your story of having dyslexia?
In my working life, particularly in teaching in the Diploma of Finance and Mortgage Broking, I've been very open about it to students because I've actually felt that it's been a real benefit for me to have that, because if anyone's going to be struggling with their learning and they know that the teacher also, doesn't spell very well, doesn't write very well, it puts them at ease. So in that context, it's been really, really easy. However, the idea of going out into the corporate world and saying, I've got dyslexia, it feels completely different. There can be prejudices against dyslexia. Organisations can fear that it could really wreck their reputation by employing someone who has dyslexia. And I don't think that people realise the phenomenal benefits that people with dyslexia actually bring to certain roles. So often in that area, I won't mention it, but I will say, look, I'm going to need some help editing my work. I need someone really good to make sure the spelling's right and that you're happy with the order of things. I don't say I'm dyslexic and therefore I need it. So I suppose all my life I've just worked around the problems and just solved the problems, but haven't so much said the name of it, apart from when I'm teaching.
And how have people reacted when you've said you've needed that bit of support?
Well, in my current role, they were terrific. I just stated it as a matter of fact. And in my current role, I'm a subject matter expert. So it was just something I said that was required. It's like one of my idiosyncrasies, and they've known me for 10 years, so they knew what I was like, my good points and my bad points.
So in your video on National Dyslexia Awareness Day, you spoke about some of the daily challenges for you. Can you share with us what some of those challenges are and how you manage them day to day?
There's really been a history to daily challenges, and it changes because I'm now in my 60s. The challenges that I face are different to the challenges when I was younger. Some of those younger day challenges were absolutely impossible to stand up and meet. However, you develop all sorts of tactics, and the way that I've really been able to meet challenges is, I think, number one, having a phenomenal self-belief, which has come from a mum who has had a phenomenal belief in me and sees people as individuals. And I think that belief has been the main thing that's driven me, to success. I've run and operated businesses. I've believed in me. I've believed that I could do it. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. But if you were to have a look at my work, you'd probably have a bit of a giggle because, I'll spell words different ways in the hope that, I'll get the right word sooner or later, the right spelling. I still need to hang on to written words with my fingers to try and check them and keep them going. The more tired you get, the harder it is. Mm-hmm. But and I have to work longer hours to have similar output to my peers. When I went to Teachers College, I didn't know I had dyslexia. We didn't know anything about dyslexia when I was growing up. And I had to work till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, plus get extensions, deadlines for my assessments. And other people were just, doing an essay the night before. But I had things on tape, which really helped. I used to listen to tape recordings. Because my handwriting was so very bad, I'd read my notes out as soon as the class finished, and I'd go and record them, and everyone thought I was very diligent, but it was the only way I would be able to reread my notes. And I would listen to those when I went to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'd pop on my headphones and be listening to my tapes as I went to sleep. I'd listen to them when I was driving my car. Those sorts of things, I found quite useful.
Wow, you must really have wanted to be a teacher.
Oh,
most people would have given up. That's a lot of effort to go through.
Well, I really felt that the education system had let me down. I knew that I was very intelligent. Once again, going back to a good mum who reinforced that. I don't know where I would have been without that sort of reinforcement. But I knew that I was intelligent. I knew I was a really good learner, but I knew that I also had problems learning. And I felt that if I taught, then I might be able to help kids who are having troubles, have a better chance of learning. And, so I was desperate. And I had started my first teaching job when I was 14 years old. And I taught swimming in the city baths when a coach caught me teaching my mum. And after the session, he asked if I'd like to work for him. So that was really nice. I had taught. I loved teaching, and I wanted to become a proper teacher because I thought there were these amazing secrets that lay in understanding of early childhood, that lay in the understanding of the brain. And I was working as a volunteer at St Paul's School for the Blind with the multiply disabled children, with Paul Quilligan, the principal there. And I just thought there were codes that could be cracked and great insights to be learnt. And I must admit, I was disappointed to find that there isn't all this magic behind it. And understanding is useful, but it's not magic anyway.
What was life like growing up for school, during your school years? What was it like?
Well, up until grade 3, it was pretty good. I was very, very social. I had huge amounts of empathy. I made friends very quickly. Your teachers were nice, and it was very social. About grade 3, 4, it all started to go very, very sour. I couldn't concentrate on the tasks. I was a talker and a fidgeter, which upset teachers. I desperately wanted to please, but I couldn't remember the instructions. I couldn't follow the instructions. And when it came to things like reading, it was just so hard because I'd get my finger and push it hard underneath the letters that we were looking at to read the words, and all the rest of the class by this stage were reading quite comfortably. And I came from a reading household. We had torture every Sunday morning where we had to sit for an hour and read a book, and I just wanted to be out and climbing a tree or running through the river. And but my mum loved reading, my sister loved reading. She started school having read Enid Blyton, and she could knit and crochet, and went to school and thought the teachers were really dumb because they're going at Burke and they didn't know how to read. I was totally the opposite, and all those little letters, they look the same, and with my eyes, I have a lot of trouble telling the difference between a C or an O or an E or an S. All those little letters are really hard to work out, and then I'd have to sound them, and I'd have to guess which one I thought it was, and then I would sound it, and then I'd have to work out the next little letter next to it and go through that whole process again. By the time I figured out what I thought the second one was, I'd forgotten what the first one was. And so it was very hard to get a string of letters to actually come up with a word. And my mum was really patient. She taught me phonics. She worked really hard. But the problem was I just couldn't really see it and get it. And in grade 3 and 4, you're expected to know your times table. That was sheer hell. And my mum and I would sit up, and she had all of these tables on the wall. I think it was from my 1 to my 12 times table, and they were huge. And we would try chanting them, singing them. Mum would point at them, and then she would ask me a really simple one like, what's 2 times 2? And I had the tables in front of me. I did not know what 2 times 2 was. There were lots of 2s everywhere, and I just couldn't do it. And we would stop when both of us were crying that much that we couldn't go on, and it would happen night after night. And Mum was incredibly encouraging, and she believed that I would, finally get it. And I did. When I was at Teachers College, I learnt my tables, and I was so proud. I could learn to recite them, but even now I much prefer to have a calculator. And I work in financial services, which is really quite funny, but I learned that I didn't have to be good at maths because my computer or my calculator was fantastic at it. So that was very, very beneficial for me. That's a great aid.
It's a very useful tool, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. But I think too, with the connection of school, of what's expected of you, that a lot of your behaviour can be considered to be just bad behaviour. And because I couldn't fit into the classroom, I would just go off into my own little world outside of the classroom, and I'd look out the window and things like that. And I can remember of a night time being in bed and just thinking to myself, I just wish I could die. If only I could just die, it would make it okay. And maybe I could get born again, and we could start all over afresh, and I could be a good girl in the classroom. And, even today, I feel really sad for that little girl back then. And, sorry, I am incredibly resilient, and depression is one of those things, I think, with dyslexic people. I'm not the only one that, grapples with that from time to time. And the stress on a very young child, the phenomenal stress of not achieving, knowing that there are clever people around you. And I didn't begrudge them. I was in total awe of them. There was a little girl, Jackie, in my classroom. And she was just gorgeous in every way. She had the neatest ponytail I'd ever seen. She had blonde hair, and I'm dark-haired. And she wrote with such beautiful, clear handwriting, and she could draw and she could colour in. And I sat with her for hours, with her trying to teach me how to colour in, and all I could do was scribble across, trying to stay inside the lines, and I'd work and work and work, and sometimes I'd scrape a hole in the page, and then I'd go outside the lines. I couldn't get it even. But I just thought she was so remarkable, and I would have loved to have been like that. And I think it would be great for teachers to know that kids that aren't achieving, it's not necessarily because they don't want to achieve. They just might not be able to do it just yet.
And that's what the foundation's all about, is trying to raise that awareness. And the guests we had on the show today, we were talking a lot about mental health and the impact that dyslexia has, and the lack of awareness and understanding that people have around the fact that it does cause quite severe mental health problems, and the fact that we can't be quite like our peers no matter how hard we try, and no matter how much we want to be like everybody else. we're not quite like everybody else, no matter how hard we colour in, or no matter how many hours we spend on our times tables or read those books or practice our spelling and rote learn day in, day out. The next day we might still forget how to spell that word that we practiced and got perfect the night before, and people don't understand and they get frustrated. And like I say to my boss, you might be frustrated with me, but don't you think I'm 10 times more frustrated at myself that I can't be just like everybody else?
That's so true. That's very, very true. But being forever the optimist, as a matter of fact, my daughter once said, "Mum, I have to be a pessimist because you're such an optimist. I have to balance you out." But I think being dyslexic has helped me phenomenally in so many respects and has given me greater joy in my life than I think I would have had if I was, say, my sister. Because of the phenomenal empathy and desire to understand learning, it gave me the opportunity to teach. And when I taught swimming, I thought, wow, this is fantastic, because there wasn't anyone that I came across that I couldn't teach to swim. And I wanted everyone who came to me to know that they were a great learner. And I loved it when I got kids whose parents would tell me they're not good in school and they're always in trouble. And, I'd be able to say to these kids, you are a great learner. And because of all of the kinesthetic stuff involved in swimming, I was a very big believer in kinesthetic learning as well as the other learning styles. But seeing kids who were constantly in trouble and not good at something learn how to swim was fantastic. And then I developed a method of teaching for babies, and I don't think I could have done that unless I was dyslexic, because I was able to stand back, listen, look, and feel with my hands what that little baby was telling me without any language. And so I was able to tell by the tension in the muscles, the relaxation in the muscles, the smile on the face, the look in the eye. I was able to let them teach me what worked for them best in the water. And that was really a very exciting time, because the predominant method of teaching infants at that time was pretty rugged. They called it drown proofing, and lots of kids didn't want to swim after that because they'd been drown proofed.
Fair enough.
It was almost swimming proofed. And so that was a great advantage for me. And I think one of the other things that being dyslexic has done for me is I've seen opportunities, and where other kids wouldn't be necessarily thinking about that. Like in grade 4, I saw a wonderful opportunity because of my empathy, and I heard about the kids at Sutherland Homes, and they were Aboriginal kids, and they'd been told that their parents were no good and couldn't look after them, and they were made wards of the state. And that was sad enough, but to add on top of that, they were told it didn't matter how well they were doing in high school. And I remember one girl at my school, she was fantastic in, which sport was she in? Can't remember now. Might have been high jump or long jump, but one of the athletics. She was absolutely fantastic, and she could have gone on with a career there if she'd been able to stay in the school system. But she couldn't, because when they were 15 years old, they had to leave school. They weren't allowed to continue. And when I came home and was telling my mum about this dreadful situation, I said, I have to get some money to give these kids so they can keep going to school. And we just discovered a couple of organisations, SAF and ABSCOL. My mum was great. She took me to their annual meetings, and I could listen to them and ask questions, which she encouraged me to do. There were no other children there. None of my peers were there. But my mum looked for opportunities for me where I could succeed and followed things I was interested in. And so I was able to raise a lot of money by doing bob a job destroying people's rose bushes and hanging up their washing incorrectly and putting the wrong colour shoe polish on, that sort of thing. And I did that from all of grade 4, 5 and 6. And I don't think I would have done that unless I had my brain and the way it works. And I've had other great, opportunities too that I don't think I would have run swim schools for 27 years. I don't think as a 14-year-old I would have said to my new boss, how do you get a business like that? And he told me, and so I just went off and did it because I was very simplistic. And I think it's opened up, opportunities. So it doesn't have to be all sad, being dyslexic, but I could imagine if I didn't have that support of my mum. My dad wasn't supportive, so I dropped him.
Yes.
But without that support, you look at the statistics and we've got so many kids overrepresented in the juvenile system, and they'd be kids who didn't have a mum like mine. And I was so lucky to be born into that family because what you get told by teachers, throughout your life would have you believing that you're just, a bit of an idiot, dumb, a time waster, you need to concentrate. I managed to get through high school with only one teacher even knowing that I had any sort of problem. Even my mum doesn't think that I've got dyslexia because I've hidden things so well from high school onwards, where I just knew how to get people off my back. And so I just didn't handwork in. And only one teacher twigged. So that was really good. So I just kept away from her. She tried to help and then I kept away from her. And I had a nice social life and went off to work and destroyed the places that I worked at.
We had one interviewee who said she learnt just to be a really good liar.
Oh, right.
Yeah. She learnt to just cover things up and to lie.
Yeah, well, I'd tell the truth. No, I didn't do it. I didn't bring it.
No, people just have lots of different strategies,
different
don't
ways
they?
That's right.
Yeah,
different ways
to manage
of
things. Yeah,
I think I use my personality to get away with stuff. And I thought, well, if people, think I'm lazy, well, I'll let them think that. I suppose that's a form of lying, isn't it?
Well, I just had my mum. Well, she, as everyone who's heard my podcast before knows, she'd proofread everything. So she would edit everything. So we just put different strategies in place.
Right. Well, I wouldn't dare put pen to paper.
But there's a fine balance, isn't there? Because there are a lot of strengths that people bring to the table when they're dyslexic. I mean, we're very resilient. We think outside the box. But it's that fine balance of making sure we have positive things that keep our mental health, to keep us resilient.
That's right. And I think recognising it, when you're starting to get down, recognising it and doing something about it is useful. And just having the courage to go on day after day and make sure you do all the things you've got to do rather than having it totally overwhelm you. So
you're in your 60s now, Chrissy, and you're becoming an advocate for dyslexia. The board, the chair now of the board of the Dear Dyslexic Foundation. How do you feel now being in a role where you're advocating very strongly and very passionately in a space that you haven't really been in before?
Well, I'm incredibly honoured to be part of Dear Dyslexic, and I think that people with dyslexia who have managed to carve out a good life for themselves, we really owe it back to help other people with dyslexia, particularly in the workplace. As well as, the schools. There's more happening in the schools now, which is brilliant. But in TAFE and uni, I was doing early childhood, primary and PE, and nobody picked up that I was dyslexic. I was given one hint by one teacher saying, use a pen that's easy to write with. And I thought, what on earth is she talking about? Ink comes out of all of them. And it would have been great to have actually had a diagnosis, and then I would have realised that, staying up to 1 o'clock in the morning, wasn't absurd. and needing extra time for my, assessments. Teachers were thinking and lecturers were thinking it was because I'd put my work off for too long. And now I know what I know. I can see that was quite an okay learning path for me, and I managed to learn. I came out in the top 8% of the state, and my dad said, "See, I told you if you tried you could do it."
Thanks, Dad.
So I think with being on the board, especially being in Australia, we're so far behind the UK. Our universities don't really seem to know much about it. I know La Trobe Uni and a few of the others are doing some good stuff where you can go and get diagnosed. That's a start, but there's nothing in place to help people through it. And it is nice to know that, that's what it is, that's what's wrong, but we need to be getting a lot greater awareness so that we can implement programs. I would dearly love to teach in the sector, helping support people through university and helping them achieve their goals. In the workplaces, when I went to work, my first job was with Gill & Durham & Co, and they were stockbrokers. And the poor things, employing me at $17 a week, my mum thought I was being ripped off, but I kept thinking, when are they going to fire me? Because I just did everything wrong. And, they were wonderful people, but I felt so bad about, breaking the switchboard when Poseidon was going crazy, and mucking up the mail, opening up letters that had already been franked, spilling coffee on very important papers, dropping the directors. I had 7 directors, and I would regularly drop their lunches and just pick them up and put them back together because I couldn't, tell them that I fell over again. And it was really sad for them having me in the workplace. I was loved. I was very widely loved, but I tried to really make up for it and asked to take home some work so that I could produce increase my productivity. And I took home all of these articles in papers that I had to cut out and paste onto bits of paper and then file them. And my alphabet wasn't very good, so the filing never worked out correctly. And where the star was, I would cut out that article, but he'd meant it to be the article next to where the star was. And so my instructions weren't that clear in my head. I cut out the bit that had the mark on it. So I had all of the wrong articles chopped out and filed into the wrong file while I was working so hard to try and be productive for them. So there were lots of good things that I did for them. I had a lovely speaking voice. I was very good with clients. The reception work was very good, apart from when I was breaking the telephones. But when I did the other work, it was fraught with problems. So I don't know. I feel fearful for people going into the workforce, particularly if they've had hidden dyslexia and they mightn't have any skills or any ability to tell people what their problem is, or any way for employers to find out how they can get the best benefit out of these people, because they do bring terrific benefit if they're, understood and pointed in the right direction. So I think as a board member of Dyslexic, I think I have the opportunity to be able to speak to industry, speak to the leaders within education, in the higher education realm in particular, and get things at a better level so that we can at least be kind of equivalent to the UK. And then once we've done that, we'll absolutely slam dunk it and have the best opportunities in Australia for people with dyslexia.
Are there any take-home messages you'd like our audience to hear before we finish today, for the young people or adults that have heard your story?
Yeah, I think you've really got to believe in yourself. and try and surround yourself with people who think you're good and who think you're okay. Try and make sure that the negative stuff that's being fed to you, that you bounce that back. Try and bounce that off you, deflect it somehow and say, you know what, I'm very intelligent, I'm a great learner. Before you got into the school system, you have a look back and see how much you learnt all by yourself without the education area helping you. You know, you learnt a language, you learnt to walk and talk, you learnt empathy for people. There are so many things. What an amazing learner we are when we're little. And then if you've got dyslexia and you hit the school system, often the methods and the ways that you're given to learn and the time frame that you're expected to learn in might not suit you, but it doesn't mean that you're dumb. It doesn't mean that you're not going to become a scientist or whatever area of interest that you have. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve, and you need to believe in yourself. So I think that's probably the biggest take home, and try and keep away from bad influences, because you can have really good fun with naughty people, and you know that can be far more rewarding for you. But you can so easily, because for us as a subgroup of people with dyslexia, as I mentioned before, it's very easy for us to get into trouble. We've got often very good imaginations. We can delight the socks off naughty people, and it could take us in the wrong direction. So I think try and get really good goals, solve great problems, and be the best person that you can be.
Well, thank you so much, Chrissy, for that delightful podcast. You've shared so many wonderful things with us.
Thank you so much, Shay. It's been a pleasure.
If you'd like to hear more about Chrissy's amazing story or more about her business, you can go to the Dear Dyslexic website to find out more at deardyslexic.com. Also, if you haven't already done so yet, make sure you sign up to our mailing list so you can keep up to date with all the work that we are doing at the Foundation. Head to deardyslexic.com. And don't forget, if there's anything you've heard today that you've found distressing, you can contact Beyond Blue 1300 22 4636 or Lifeline 13 11 14. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.